Hello everyone, this is Akash Chauhan, and in today's lecture we'll continue with our last or second last lecture of Servlet Unit 4. And just in this lecture we'll focus on what is the Servlet lifecycle, what are the main important steps or the methods inside the Servlet lifecycle, what is a Servlet package, what is JSDK, because we have heard about the JDK but we have not heard about the JSDK. What is the brief and the origin of CGI and the advantage over CGI? We have been using Servlet in this unit, so what would be the advantage of using Servlet over CGI? CGI is actually the the old generation Servlet. So previously CGI's related interface were used in the past, but these days it is not in practice. We will see why it is not in practice, and at last we will also look into what are those specifications of J2EE which is required to use a servlet, okay, or the servlet interface. So this lecture is going to be quite theoretical, and for your exam purpose it would be very helping. So I will upload this presentation over the Moodle, and this video lecture as well. But sorry, I will not be able to add any code in that because all these topics are theoretical. So it would be quite have a discussion only. So let's start with the flow and this lecture. The first topic of this lecture is servlet life cycle. So let's explore that. What is servlet life cycle? So this is in servlet lifecycle. We will see what is written over here. But first, you listen to me. Let's say we know that there is a servlet container over a server. So whenever you hit a servlet, a particular object for that particular servlet would generate inside the servlet container. So when that object will be created, or let's say initiated, or when we will not be using the servlet will automatically be destroyed. So there are three phases of each servlet. Let's say you invoke a service, okay, you hit a URL. That URL would go to the webxml file, and webxml file, according to that mapping, there would be a particular class inside your package, okay. Inside a package source package, there would be a particular class in which you have written a service method for that servlet, for that particular URL. According to the mapping, there would be a service method, okay. So it means to perform that logic, a particular object for that class should be there, and that all happens automatically, okay. So it means whenever you hit a URL, whenever you hit the particular servlet, that particular servlet object will be generated. But before, the process of having this object generated inside the servlet container is called the initialization phase. Okay, so the first is event happens in the servlet lifecycle. The first step is the instantiation. So instantiation means your object will be created inside the servlet container. So as you can see over here, the life cycle of the servlet program include these events. So I'm talking about the first one. It is instantiation event. So it means this init method is called once. This would be written inside your servlet. So as you remember, we have three ways to build a servlet. Either you use servlet interface, or you use a generic servlet abstract class, or you use HTTP servlet abstract class. So either way you use, you have to write, for at least you have to provide your business logic inside their service method. So in case of servlet interface, you have to provide the definition of five methods. Okay, if you remember, the init method, the destroy method, the service method, fourth one is the servlet config method, and the last one is the servlet config information method. Okay, so these are five methods inside the servlet interface you have to provide the definition of. Okay, so inside this init method is that method we are talking about. So instantiation is actually when you instantiate, okay, when you instantiate a servlet. Okay, this is similar to that. The service method inside the servlet interface is similar to whenever your request will arrive or hit the particular service method, then the business logic written inside that servlet will be executed. So this second one is the request arrival event, is actually when you have created by hitting the URL, or the container will generate a related servlet inside the servlet container. The object will be there, and then it will be the responsibility of the servlet container to call the service method, and your job is to write some business logic code inside the service method. So the service method is the main method to perform the actual business logic. Either way you perform, either servlet interface, HTTP servlet, or the generic servlet, you have to provide the business logic. Okay, inside servlet interface there is a service method. Inside generic servlet there is again a service method, but inside HTTP servlet there is a do get do post method in which you provide your service or the business logic. The servlet containers calls the service method to handle the request come from the client. So you have hit the URL, and that request will be generated, and it will hit the web XML file first of all, and according to that XML file there would be a mapped servlet. So the servlet class web XML file would help the web container, okay, the servlet container, to find, okay, this is the servlet which you are meant to execute. Okay, so the servlet container would do, it will generate the object. So this process is called the instantiation event. Okay, the second thing is the request arrival. Request actually has reached to the the servlet. Okay, so now it is the job of the servlet container to execute the business logic. Okay, it will use the JDK or the Apache environment. Okay, but the request would come to the WebXML and then to the container. Destruction event, it is similar to the destroy method inside the servlet interface. So this method is also called one time. Okay, and like init method, okay, init method is also called only one time. So the destroy method is actually help you to close all your files, or to give the message to the console, to put some to record some logs into the files. So destroy method is basically whenever the destroy method related to the servlet will be called by the container, it is the end of the life cycle of the servlet. So as you can see, the servlet terminates by calling the destroy method by the servlet container. So the servlet container will call this destroy method. This is one of the 5 methods inside the servlet interface, if you remember. So the destroy method is called once at the end of the life cycle of the servlet. The method gives you servlet a chance to close database connections and other cleanup tasks, or you can log your data. So these are 3 events of a life cycle. First one is the instantiation event. Second thing is request arrival event, and the third is the destruction event. But there is a one common question should be there, that why we are saying it's an event. So let's look at it. This first 3 lines. So we will find out why we are saying it's an event. The first is saying operations that are involved with the birth to that are collectively known as the life cycle of the servlet. So this is simple. An action performed to the object of the life cycle operation is called the life cycle event. It means whatever you do with the servlet, it is called an event. Okay, that is why whenever you are instantiating a servlet, it is called the first step, the instantiation event. When you are performing the business logic, it is actually saying that a request has arrived to the container. Okay, the actual container would have now the object of the servlet, so it can perform the business logic. That is why it is called the request arrival event. So the service can be performed. Third step is the destruction event. Okay, so the destruction event is also called a lifecycle event because it is somehow manipulating the data related to the servlet. Okay, so the execution, some logic, it is also called, the event handling. So this service, whenever you write something, this is also called the event handling. So all these steps are called the lifecycle events. Okay, or inside whenever you write a code, it is also called the event handling. So this is all about the servlet life cycle. So let's say if a question would come into the exam that what is servlet, so you have to write what is servlet. It is built upon JSP. It will use the servlet API. It will use the Tomcat server to deploy. It will use a WebXML file and all sort of things. Then you have to write what is the servlet lifecycle, and if it would ask you how to build a servlet, then you have to provide the implementation of a servlet as well. You have three ways. I have mentioned this earlier as well: the servlet interface, the HTTP servlet abstract class, and the third is the generic servlet abstract class. So you have three ways. Whatever would be asked in the question, you are supposed to write it. Okay. So this topic, I would say, this is usually come into the theory exam, so it is very important. So for you guys to understand and what to write in the exam, uh, you make sure that you would remember that init and the destroy method will be called only one time. Okay, in the life cycle of a particular servlet, till a one servlet would be alive in the container, init and the destroy method only be called once. Okay, when the destroy method would be would be executed, then the servlet would be the servlet object would be disappeared in from the servlet container, because there would be a garbage collector beside the servlet container. But the init and the destroy method will only be called once. Service method can be called twice just before the destruction of that. Make sure that service, if you want to call the service method 2-3 times, it is fine, but make sure that destroy method is not executed till that point. If the destroy method would be executed, then you have to again initiate or instantiate the event. Okay, you have to start the life cycle of that particular servlet once again. Okay, so the third topic is the second topic is the servlet package. So servlet package we have already used. If you remember that in my previous lectures I have covered when I was performing some creating some servlet. So I told you that you have to add Java servlet inside your library as well. So if you remember, we have right clicked on the project, clicked on the build path, and then go to the library, and then we have added some servlet API. So we have added servlet API because the Tomcat provides you this Java X servlet HTTP package, so that you would be able to use do get do post method. So if you remember that inside do get method we had two parameters: HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. So HTTP servlet request is actually to take the information from the client and the user. HTTP servlet response, if you remember, we have used print writer, and then we have used the object of that print writer to call the println, and then we have provided some messages as a string inside that println method. So both of these, the servlet request, HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response, both are the part of do get or do post method, and they are also inside the Java X package. Okay, the servlet package or the HTTP package. So this is about that package. Make sure one thing, that whenever you execute your project, okay, you have to add that library from the Tomcat server into your project inside the build path. There is a I have covered this topic inside one of my lectures of this unit, so you can go there and watch if you are not getting what I'm saying. Okay, this is JSDK, okay, and this is Java Servlet Development Kit. Okay, so we have already used a JDK earlier, because I have told you that you need a JDK if in case you want to compile some code. Okay, to execute a code you need a JRE, Java Runtime Environment. These days, whenever you install JDK, appropriate environment would also be associated. So whenever you install a new JDK, okay, let's say 4.2, so there is a 4.2 GRE as well. So if you want to compile and manipulate the code, the JDK would be used. Okay, and whenever you run that code, the exe file or the byte file, the same appropriate GRE would be used. So these days JDK is in the trend. But what is JSDK? As the name suggests, It is Java Servlet Development Kit. Okay, so we will not start from the first line, we will start from the last line. So in order to understand what is the conclusion of JSDK, so it would be super easy for us to understand, what is the JDK and how to use it. So let's look at the last point. It is saying it is better to use Java Development Kit. Okay, we have been using this kit. Okay, for second, third, and now the fourth unit to compile your Java code. Okay, that is fine. We have already discussed it. And the Tomcat server to run your servlet application. Okay, so this is what we have been using. We have been using JDK to compile our Java code, and then we are using Tomcat server to run that code. Okay, by hitting some URL. Since the classes of the Java servlet development kit has been archived by the Oracle, it means what it means JDK is now it not in trend, okay, because it is the add-on to the regular JDK. It means if you are using JDK, all the functions related to the JSDK would be integrated in the JDK itself. Okay, as you can see, second line is it is saying this is an add-on to the regular JDK. Okay, so you don't need to use it separately if you are dealing with the JSDK, because it would provide you all the classes and the interfaces to develop the servlet. Okay, but we have not installed any JSDK. Okay, we have installed only the JDK because it is uh, all the classes and the interfaces are already been integrated with the JDK. So we can say the JSDK is the old JDK, which was actually dedicated to develop the servlet based web apps. Okay, but still JDK, as you can see, although the JSDK is still available as the legacy technology from the Oracle archives. Okay, it means Oracle still provides you this JSDK toolkit. If you want to use, I have given the link over here, download link. You can use it inside your IDE. Okay, instead of JDK, you can integrate this one as well as the runtime environment JSDK, and you can use the same servlet with this development kit. Okay, so this is similar to the JDK, but definitely if Oracle has archived this type of classes or the kit already, it means this is not in trend and it would be a little complex than the JDK. So all these things, whatever written over here, you can write in your theory exam. So I hope this is clear. I already told you this is not a lecture to discuss code. This is theoretical, and it is important for your theory exam. So this is another one. There's a CGI, the brief version of CGI, and what is actually the CGI. So CGI stands for Common Gateway Interface. So what is this Common Gateway Interface? We will discuss later on. First, have the brief of what is CGI. So CGI is actually the similar to Servlet, but it is not used anymore. Okay, because it not provide you the good performance. It is not scalable. It means you are not able to change that frequently when you using CGI. It wouldn't provide you the reusability of the code. So that is the reason servlet is being used these days. Okay, so it is actually the old servlet but not in trend as of now, because it not provide you good performance, it would not provide you good scalability, and also it would not provide you the reusability of the code. That's why it is not the optimal solution to develop the servlet or the web app kind of things. Okay, so let's read all these statements what we have see, what we are able to see. CGI is the common gateway interface. CGI performance, scalability, reusability issues make it less optimal solution these days. Hence the servlet technology was introduced to overcome the shortcomings of CGI technology. Okay, so these three things you have to write: the performance, scalability, and reusability. As we are not going to use it as a project to develop a project, we will not see the code because it's not that important. But if you want to, you can explore by yourself. Okay, servlet provides you better performance as it is written over here than CGI in terms of processing time. So it would not take that much time to process a servlet. Memory utilization, because servlet uses benefits of multi-threading. As the servlet supports multi-threading environment, it means the memory utilization and the processing time would be very fast. Okay, for each request a new thread is created. That is why it give you the the faster loading and the responsive action to a particular request. Platform, another important thing, servlet platform is the system independent. The web application development with the servlet can be run on any standard web container such as Tomcat, JBoss, Glassfish. Actually, we have only used Tomcat. Probably in the last unit, we will use any other, probably the Glassfish or JBoss. Okay, we have used Windows and Mac as well as operating system. So Servlet is quite good with all the platforms. Okay, probably in the last unit we use JBoss or the Glassfish because EJB wouldn't run on Tomcat, I think. So we'll see. Servlet are robust because the container takes care of the life cycle of the servlet, and we don't need to worry about the memory leak, security, and the garbage collection. As I told you that whenever you invoke or hit a servlet, the servlet container would instantiate the servlet or create an object for that servlet and would perform all the necessary tasks. The main important task is to perform the service logic and at the end the destruction, the destroy method as well. So it would become the responsibility of the container, and even after the servlet would die, okay, it would be the responsibility of the servlet container to collect the garbage. What is not referred as of now, you can collect as a garbage. So it would be the complete responsibility of the container. Okay, servlet are easy to maintain and scalable. That is the first point. These three things you have to remember in mind, that CGI is not good as compared to the servlet in terms of the performance, in terms of the scalability. Scalability means the change you make in the servlet, reusability of the code. These three things are very important when it comes to write. The advantage of servlet over CGI in the brief origin of the uh, CGI. Okay, so you don't need to write the code if it comes to the exam. Okay, but you need to aware about that it is not being used and it is a legacy technology. Okay, because of the shortcomings of the CGI technology. Okay, and Servlet provides you all the benefits which is not covered by the CGI technology. Last topic is the J2EE servlet specifications. This is super easy. I have told you that you have to follow the J2EE specifications. The first thing of this specification is your IDE should support the J2EE environment. Then only it would provide you the platform to create a servlet, because if you don't use the J2EE, it would not help to it would not help you to provide or add the Tomcat libraries. Okay, because you would not be able to add the server tab in your IDE. Then if you are not able to add the server, then also it would say that you would not be able to add the servlet or the web app based library into your project as well. Okay, if you remember, I have told you to add libraries in the build path of a project. Okay, like servlet API from the Tomcat. But in case if you are not able to use the J2EE IDE, it means you wouldn't be able to use all sorts of server APIs. Okay, so in order to use those specifications, first you need to have the J2EE supported IDE. All these things are related to the things we have already discussed. Let's go by statements. Java Servlet is the foundation web specification in the Java enterprise platform. It means it is saying that if you want to build a Java servlet, it is the foundation. The foundation is to have a Java enterprise platform. Okay, in a simple language, you can write it. It is the book language. Developer can build web application using the Servlet API to interact with the request response workflow. So I have told you that you just need to simply hit a URL to run a particular servlet over the server. Okay, so if there is a proper environment of the over the server, you simply need to hit the URL, or if you have the input with your URL, you would be able to hit the servlet. Java servlet is the standard technology to interact with the web on the J2EE platform. So as I have mentioned that over the server there has to be a enterprise platform. Okay, those libraries should be integrated with your project, and the environment to execute those libraries would also be there. When POM XML, POM is actually generally being used inside the IT industry. Instead of web XML, they usually say it to the POM.xml. Okay, so pom.xml is basically would have all the mappings of your project, all the the initial files, the primary files, and the dependency that you would add from to hit a URL. It would add it would map it to the particular class, and in class the web container would find the service method. So if you want to use the Servlet API inside any project, there is a way to add those directly as well. Let's say if you would be using so in the last unit when we will be creating a stress based project, we will use the internet APIs. So this is about how to add the internet based API, or integrate some kind of external APIs in your project. Okay, so you wouldn't be able to relate it as of now, but this is if you want to add some kind of external API in your project. Okay, so you simply need to add the dependency of those libraries. So as you are able to see, we want to use the Servlet API. Okay, we can use the internet Servlet API or the libraries of the API. So we just simply need to add the dependency, open the dependency, close the dependency, and use a particular version of a particular library. And we can use all the open source API. Okay, the application interface we can use of all those libraries directly from the internet, or uh, your project would download all the related libraries over your project. Okay, and then you can call those libraries from your system as well. So we will discuss more about this in the last unit as well, because much of this would be talk, because the last unit stands for enterprise Java beans. It means you are supposed to create beans for enterprise, and when it comes to enterprise, it would also relate to the J2EE. Okay, the Java Enterprise Edition. Okay, so they are somehow interrelated, we will see in the last unit. So this is all for today's lecture. I know this is quite theoretical in today's lecture, because we didn't have any we couldn't add any the source code that we can discuss today. But for your theory exam, all these topics are very important. That's why I have covered it at the end. Okay, one or two topics. I think your session collaboration, how to create a session with the servlet, and how to communicate or collaborate two, three servlet together. These two topics are left, so I'll cover those topics, two topics in the next lecture. If you have any doubt, you can comment down below to this video. Okay, and thank you so much, guys, for today's lecture.